Nintendo might be working with more third-party developers to work on their own IPs, bringing out more games, and this is an extremely exciting possibility to me. There's been a lot of talk and speculation about Nintendo this year because it looks like this is the year where we're going to get new hardware from them. Obviously, there's been all kinds of rumors, debates, and talks about what Nintendo is doing for the next hardware. People really want to see what that system is going to be. And while I am working on a video talking more about Switch 2 speculation specifically, something that I encountered while researching and reading up on it was this article from Christopher Drake, which is a great article overall talking about Nintendo's current position and what might be going on with the Switch 2. I have a link down below if you want to check it out. But one of the specific things that stood out to me while reading the article was a specific passage talking about the fact that Nintendo was in talks with 3 different third-party developers to make games for their IPs. Now, this is not a brand new thing for Nintendo. There have been numerous games that Nintendo has released in collaboration with third-party devs, either games that are very obvious crossover collaboration type stuff like we've seen them do with Sega for the Mario and Sonic Olympic games, or Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which was a crossover of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. They've also worked with Koei Tecmo for a number of Warriors-based games based on Legend of Zelda and Fire Emblem, and of course one of the more obvious ones to happen during the Switch life cycle, crossing over with Ubisoft for Mario and Rabbids. Another really interesting example that came during the Switch's lifetime was Cadence of Hyrule, a game made by an indie developer whose previous only major title was Crypt of the Necrodancer, and they got to collaborate with Nintendo to make a Zelda-based game using the same kind of gameplay format, which honestly is just incredible. And the thing is, even outside of these really obvious collaborations where it's like a crossover game or something like that, there's been other occasions where Nintendo has also worked with third-party devs simply to develop games for them. A really good example of this would be if you look at some of the handheld Legend of Zelda games like Oracle of Ages, Seasons, and later on Minish Cap on the GBA. Those weren't actually developed by Nintendo internally. Those were developed by a team called Flagship that was funded by a collaboration of Nintendo, Capcom, and Sega, and Capcom even got to be in the opening startup for those games. I think a lot of times when people talk about Nintendo and think about their success with their IPs, there's a heavy focus on everything being, under lock and key guarded first-party devs only, which really isn't the case. They just make sure that when they do work with other third parties like this and share their IPs, it's ultimately stuff that's still going to be restricted only to Nintendo platforms and isn't going to find its way to other systems like PlayStation, Xbox, or even on PCs. Now, I think that's worth specifying that was said in this article is that this isn't a matter of Nintendo just talking with third-party devs they've already been working with to develop new games. This is them reaching out to more third-party devs, 3 new ones on top of people they already have a current track record with. And what makes me really excited about this is one of the possibilities of what this could mean for how Nintendo would leverage these partnerships. When you think about Nintendo allowing another company to make use of their IPs for making a game, there's kind of 3 different main broad categories this could go in, right? You help bring them in as support for additional spin-off and side games that are supporting a major franchise that's already around. Zelda is a really great example of this, how we've had the Hyrule Warriors games and Cadence of Hyrule, which I mentioned earlier. There's the idea of doing more collaboration and crossover style kind of games, like with Mario Rabbids, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and really Super Smash Bros. When you think about it, as far as the other IPs that end up getting represented there. And the third possibility, and the one that I'm actually hoping ends up being the case a little more so than the others, giving the opportunity for IPs that have not been made internally by Nintendo in quite some time to possibly get some new entries. As incredible as the Nintendo Switch library has been, there are a lot of major IPs that people are fans of that have not seen actual support during this lifespan, and if they have, sometimes it's relegated only to ports and remasters of previous games and not anything entirely new. Some big examples of this would be, for instance, Donkey Kong, which had a port of Tropical Freeze from the Wii U, but no actual new releases for the Switch specifically. Star Fox, another example, had a game on the Wii U with Star Fox Zero, not a peep from the series at all on the Switch, not even a port of that game, aside from being able to play some of the older ones via Nintendo Switch Online. And reaching back even farther, there's other Nintendo IPs that people have been interested in seeing brought back in some form that Nintendo just hasn't given the time to lately for one reason or another. Some popular examples of this would be stuff like the Mother series of games, F-Zero, which we did get the 99 version of that came out this year, but again, there hasn't been a true new F-Zero game in quite some time. And a big one for me that I've talked about numerous times when going over wish lists of, things Nintendo could do or games to bring back, things that I would love to see happen, Golden Sun. In fact, I think Golden Sun is a perfect example of what third-party partnerships could mean for Nintendo in the future if they were to hand out some IPs that haven't been touched in a little while. This is a franchise that was made by Camelot, that has just been on a non-stop train of releasing sports titles for the Nintendo Switch. They made Mario Tennis and the Mario Golf game, and for a while now, that really has been their main focus as a dev. They made the first 2 Golden Sun games on the GBA, then they released a sequel on the DS that did not get received quite as well, and that even ended on a cliffhanger and never got a sequel. And we've been sitting here almost 15 years later with not a peep from the series since. Now, there's multiple reasons why this could be. It could be just that Nintendo themselves don't have any interest in leveraging the IP at all. It could be that Camelot, over the course of the years and changes in staff, aren't really the same group responsible for making those original ones and don't have an interest in trying to make more in that particular franchise. It's just a name and general concept of RPG that I don't think has really been tapped into by any kind of spiritual successor just yet. I mean, you can see its influence in a couple of different games. Sea of Stars was an example of something that came out last year that, primarily pulled from Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG, but there was definitely a little bit of Golden Sun DNA in there as well. And I just can't help but imagine if Nintendo made the right partnership and found the right studio that is already working on the genre of games, whether or not they could give it the right coat of paint when bringing it back. And this is something we're actually already seeing happen industry-wide a little bit, right? Konami is a really good example. They're really not internally developing a whole lot anymore and focusing either on porting and remastering past games or offering out major IPs to other devs that might be a good fit for carrying the torch for them. This is what's happening with Silent Hill right now, which for some of the projects that have already begun to release, like the TV show interactive thing, not maybe the best example of how that situation could work out, but we do also have a Silent Hill 2 remake, along with various other brand new title games coming from established horror game devs, that might be a bit more promising. And that really is my biggest curiosity with what more partnerships with Nintendo could mean. It is entirely possible this could just end up being something for more Zelda spin-off titles, or maybe there is some kind of collaboration with another major IP where it's interesting to see a crossover with a Nintendo property and something else. But the idea of being able to maybe give a little attention to some franchises that haven't been touched during the Switch's life cycle or going even further back, IPs that Nintendo has the rights to and just isn't really leveraging on their own at the moment, that with the right discerning eye, Nintendo could find the right devs to do these IPs justice. And what's also great about that is it's not taking away from Nintendo resources. I have to imagine part of the reason why we haven't seen a new Donkey Kong game in so long is because everything that's been going on with Retro Studios and working on Metroid Prime 4. Camelot, like I mentioned earlier, is too busy making Mario sports games. Those can keep going on and still being worked on, and don't necessarily have to mean that because they're being worked on, some other IP just has to sit by the wayside and be untouched. I don't know, these just all are a bunch of thoughts that I've been having since reading the article. I just find it to be a really interesting potential thing for what Nintendo could do in the future. There's some very safe ways that this could play out that could still be very good, but there's some interesting other possibilities out there that I want to believe could happen. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Would you be okay seeing certain older Nintendo IPs maybe get a little attention from a third-party dev if Nintendo's not going to do it themselves? Are there any particular matchups that you would think it would be really interesting to see happen? Like I said at the start of this video, I am also working on kind of a Switch 2 wrap-up as far as just all the rumors and things that have been circulating left and right at the start of this year. There's quite a bit that's all coming out at once, some of which is, I think, potentially believable, other things not so much. So keep your eyes open for that video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on it, and I will see you guys later.